in Matthew chapter 15, when in actuality, he was calling her.
Hello, my name is Philmont Bostic. I am a newly minted PhD in practical theology, and my area of interest or what I study is actually humor and theology. And there is actually some humor in this part of the text that the content creator just mentioned. I know some of you might be thinking, what does this Jesus calls him a dog have to do with humor? And I actually mentioned this in my dissertation. And what is going on here is what Randolph Richards and Richard James would call a honor contest in their book, Misreading Scripture with Individualist Eyes. And so in Jesus's time, they would have these things called honor contests. And what is an honor contest? It's essentially where two individuals would go back and forth having a verbal kind of altercation is probably the best word to use, and whoever won would gain honor over the other person. And so oftentimes when you see in the scriptures where Jesus is going back and forth with the Pharisees and the Sadducees, what he's actually engaging in is actual honor contest. So when Jesus encounters this woman, this Canaanite woman, and I think Matthew calls her a Syrophoenician woman, either way, he's encountering a woman who's not a part of the Jewish culture, but she's asking something of him. And this is what starts the honor contest. This is similar to what African Americans would know as the dozens, or janking, or capping, or even roasting. All of these names kind of are the same thing. If you think about it, there's a lot of similarities between the dozens and an honor contest. They both required an audience. They both were verbal exchanges, and they both brought about some kind of honor. And I know what you're thinking, what kind of honor do you get from having a roast battle with somebody? But if you think about it, for African Americans, when you have the ability to be quick-witted and to come back and to fire back, you get praise in your neighborhood for your verbal skills. This is not uncommon. This is something that derives from our culture. And so even in West Africa, they would have these contests of people being able to take verbal jars. And so the dozens, in essence, is what I'm arguing, is an honor contest. So let me take some time to explain what the dozens is. The dozens is a verbal game of combat between two combatants. Generally, it's done between men. Not saying women don't get involved, but you a lot of times see it with men. And what they would do, the goal of the dozens is who can come up with the quickest, best comment off the top of their head at their opponent, right? And so, generally speaking, the crowd is involved, and the crowd decides who makes the best verbal jab, and the winner usually is decided by the person who either gets upset or quits. And so that's how the dozens are played. All right, so let's even look at the name, the dozens. The dozens name, it doesn't really have a set idea where it came from. And so what some people believe is that the name came from the idea that your mother was one of the dozen women that the master would have access to, or it could come from the idea that if you were a slave and you were sickly and you had some kind of ailment, that they would have sold by the dozens. And so some people feel like this is where the name came from. So why do we even play the dozens? Beyond the honor that we get from playing it, history points to the fact that maybe we started playing the dozens because it was a way to make it through some of the things that we were going through. Given that African Americans have had to endure so many horrible things, it was thought that if you could deal with the verbal jars and jabs that you got from your family, that you could be able to deal with them when you went out into the rest of the world as a way of toughening yourself up. And it kind of took some of the sting out of a lot of the comments and things that you would make. And so if you could go through being roasted by your family and your friends when somebody else did it, it didn't bother you. So how do these two concepts come together? Well, what I argue in my dissertation is that what Jesus and this woman are engaging in is a honor contest or a dozens session. And so generally with the dozens, what would happen is a question or a comment would start off, and look what happens. So Jesus is walking with his disciples, and this woman is calling behind them. And so she's calling and calling after him. And so this is kind of how they get started. This is kind of how they say he got slipped into the dozens, because a lot of times you can get involved into a dozens battle without your knowledge. It could just happen. If you're talking to somebody, they say something slick, you say something slick back, and then a dozen contest kicks off. So she's calling after them, and the disciples say to Jesus, like, shoo her away, she's harassing us, even though she's calling Jesus and not them. So that's hilarious in and of themselves, that they thought that much of themselves. And so she falls to Jesus' feet, and what does she say? She says, Master, can you heal my daughter? And this is where the content creator is pointing out where I think the dozens contest kicks in, because he says, I'm only to come for the people of the house of Israel. It is not right for me to give the children's bread to the dogs. So contrary to what your Sunday school teacher told you and what your pastors might have told you, he literally calls this woman a dog. I've heard people try to explain it away by saying, no, he says little dog, but no, he calls her a dog. This is a shot. This is a jab. He's throwing the first round at her. And so notice what she does. Look how quick-witted she is. One of my friend's mom says she must have been a black woman, because she fires back just as quick as Jesus throws it out. She fires back and says, but even the dogs can eat the crumbs under the master's table. And what she's essentially saying is, I may be a dog, but I'll even take the crumbs that you have to offer. So notice that Jesus concedes to her request. Not only does he concede to the contest, he also concedes to her request and grants her what she's truly looking for, getting her daughter healed. And that's no difference than if you're having a roast battle with somebody and they get mad and walk away. You won. That's essentially how it happened. And so notice Jesus engages in this honor contest. He engages in this act of the dozens, and it seems like he loses. To be honest, I think Jesus did this on purpose. I think that he deliberately allowed this to happen to show his disciples that there are going to be people that you interact with that you think you're better than, but they still too deserve the gospel. They still too deserve access to the kingdom. Even if it's nothing but the crumbs, they still deserve access. So yeah, Jesus concedes and the woman's child gets healed. And what I find most hilarious about this situation is, if you look at it as a roast battle or as a dozens contest, Jesus very much throws the first shot, and he very much engages, and then he hits with this aha moment, right? And to me, I argue in my dissertation that these aha moments are these moments of humor that we find in the Bible. If we look throughout the Bible, there's plenty of aha moments that happen that I believe are acts of humor. And so if you want to know anything more about that, or anything more about me, just let me know. Trying to do more of these to kind of get some of my research out there and let people know that not only can you engage in the Bible, but you also can engage in the Bible in a humorous manner. God bless you.